Welcome back to another self-love podcast, and welcome to another chapter in the self-respect series. In this episode, we're talking about boundaries, but not in the rigid, cold way that makes them feel like punishment. This is about self-respect. This is about care. This is about learning how to say, "This matters to me," and honoring that with love, not guilt. So if you've ever struggled to say no, felt like you had to justify your needs, or wondered why you always feel drained in certain relationships, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Let's talk about what boundaries actually are and what they're not. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're not ultimatums. They're not cold, harsh lines meant to push people away or make them feel unwelcomed. Their clarity, their direction, they are truth telling with love. I used to think boundaries were only necessary if something really bad happened. Like if someone disrespected you outright or crossed a major line. I didn't realize that the little things, like not having time to yourself, saying yes when you want to say no, answering texts at 11 p.m. when you're exhausted. Those add up. They drain you slowly, and over time, you start to feel disconnected from yourself. For a long time, I was that girl who didn't want to ruffle feathers. I wanted to be easy to be around, easy to work with, easy to love. But trying to be easy eventually made life hard. I would stretch myself too thin, especially in work. I'd say yes to one more thing because I didn't want to be seen as lazy. Or I'd stay in conversations I didn't want to be in just because I didn't want the other person to feel rejected. But here's the thing. I was rejecting myself over and over. The shift happened when I started asking, what if boundaries aren't about keeping people out, but about keeping me in? What if they're not selfish, but sacred? Now I see boundaries as a way of honoring my needs. Not because I don't care about others, but because I finally care about myself enough. And when we care for ourselves deeply, our boundaries become more compassionate. They're not, "Get away from me." This is how I can stay close to you without losing myself. That's the kind of boundary I want in my life, and the kind I'm still practicing. Let's talk about what self-respect actually looks like in our relationships. Because it's one thing to talk about boundaries, and it's another to actually uphold them. And this is a big piece of the self-respect series. Learning how to show up for yourself, even in the dynamics that test you the most. I'll be honest, one of the hardest lessons I've learned is that not speaking up does not keep the peace. It just buries your truth. There was a time in a past relationship when I held something in, not because it wasn't important, but because I didn't want to seem too much. I worried I'd be labeled dramatic or sensitive, so I swallowed the discomfort and stayed quiet. But it ate me alive. It slowly chipped away at my confidence. I'd replay the conversation in my head, hoping the other person would notice something was off, but they didn't, because how could they? Eventually, I ripped the Band-Aid off and had the hard conversation. And I'll never forget the feeling. It was like a weight lifted. Not because everything magically resolved, but because I chose me. And I've learned that boundary setting is not about controlling others, but reclaiming yourself. And here's the thing no one tells you. When you finally speak your truth, you also take on the responsibility to keep honoring it. You don't just set a boundary once, you live it. And that part can feel lonely or uncomfortable at first. But long term, it's liberating. Because you know you have your own back. Now when it comes to work, especially in real estate, boundaries feel extra tricky. I used to feel like I had to say yes to everything, respond instantly, be available 24/7, or I'd somehow fail. But I've realized not everything is an emergency. Yes, time is of the essence in this industry, but not at the expense of your health, your peace, or your personal life. Now, if something can wait until the morning, it waits. I don't check my phone late at night anymore, and I remind myself often, my clients benefit from a version of me that's rested, focused, and not running on fumes. Whether it's love, friendship, or business, respecting yourself changes how you show up. It helps you attract people and opportunities that honor you, not just need you. One of the biggest misconceptions about boundaries is that they're harsh, cold, or mean, especially if you grew up around guilt, silence, or unspoken expectations. Setting a boundary can feel like you're slamming a door in someone's face. But here's the truth. A boundary is not a wall. It's a door that you own, and you get to decide when it's open, who comes in, and under what conditions. Boundaries are an act of clarity, not cruelty. They're not about pushing people away. They're about making sure you don't push yourself to the edge, trying to keep everyone else comfortable. Let's break it down a little bit. Why boundaries are so hard for us, especially if you're a recovering people pleaser. When you're used to being the go-to person, or when you've measured your worth by how easy you are to be around, setting a boundary can feel like you're breaking some invisible rule. You might think, what if they think I'm selfish? What if they leave? What if I'm being too sensitive? But what if instead the question was, what does it cost me to stay silent? What parts of myself do I keep abandoning to maintain this connection? Because when you say yes at your own expense, you're not being kind. You're being self-sacrificing. And here's what I had to learn the hard way. If someone benefits from you having no boundaries, they're going to be uncomfortable when you finally set one. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them adjust. That's not your job to fix. The reframing that changed everything for me. I used to think boundaries were about keeping people out. Now I see them as a way to protect what matters most. My energy, my integrity, my time, my peace. It's not about punishing others. It's about partnering with yourself. Here's some quick scripts and mindset shifts so you can practice this in real life. Instead of, I don't want to hurt their feelings, try, I want to honor my own needs without guilt. Instead of, I should say yes to be nice, try, I can be kind and still say no. Instead of, they'll be upset if I don't show up, try, if they care about me, they'll understand my no. Here's some simple phrases that create space. I'm not available for that right now. That doesn't work for me, but I hope you find what you're looking for. I need some time before I can commit to that. Let me get back to you after I've had some time to check in with myself. Your tone doesn't have to be cold to be clear. You can speak boundaries with compassion and still be firm. If this already feels a little uncomfortable, good. That means you're stretching out of old patterns. Boundaries aren't easy at first, especially if you're used to shrinking. But the more you practice them, the more you'll feel how respectful they really are to you and everyone else. Let's talk about how boundaries show up in different corners of our lives. Romantic, platonic, work. They look different, but the root is always the same. Choosing yourself without abandoning others. 1. Romantic relationships. The silent weight of not speaking up. I remember a time in a past relationship where I felt something shift. I wasn't being spoken to kindly, but instead of saying anything, I rationalized it. I don't want to start a fight. I'm probably just sensitive. I don't want to make it awkward. But the truth is, I was protecting the other person's comfort while letting my own needs erode quietly in the background. And what I learned is this: not speaking up doesn't avoid conflict, it just delays it while letting resentment grow. By the time I did say something, I was so emotionally charged that it didn't land well. Now, if something feels off, I bring it up earlier. Not aggressively, but honestly, because the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. 2, friendship. Being the therapist friend until you're drained. There was a season in my life where I was the one everyone went to when their life was falling apart. And don't get me wrong, I love being there for people. That's part of who I am. But I noticed I was showing up as a support system, not a whole person. People would trauma dump, vent for hours, and then disappear. And I would feel emotionally exhausted while telling myself I was just being a good friend. But eventually, I had to realize support is not one-sided. Friendship isn't about being a safe space. It's about being respected too. I started asking myself after certain conversations, do I feel lighter or heavier after talking to this person? And if the answer was heavier every time, I had to create some distance without guilt. 3, work. When you decide your time has value. This one still comes up in real estate for me. There was a time when I would respond to every text, every question, every request the moment it came in, because I thought that's what it meant to be a professional, to be committed. But in reality, I was just disrespecting myself to appear impressive to others. Now I set a standard. If it's not urgent, it waits. If I'm with my family or resting, I don't break that boundary unless it's truly essential. And what's wild? My business didn't suffer. It grew. Because clients began to respect my time more than I respected it first. Whether it's in love, friendship, or business, your boundaries are not walls. They're bridges. They create clearer expectations, healthier dynamics, and deeper self-trust. Think of a relationship in your life, romantic, friendship, or professional, where you felt drained, resentful, or anxious. Now ask yourself, what boundary did I ignore, soften, or delay? What was I afraid might happen if I upheld it? And what might shift if I choose to honor myself first next time? This reflection isn't about blame. It's about awareness, because awareness is what creates choice, and choice is what builds self-respect. You don't need to have a hard conversation today. You just need to be honest with yourself about where your energy feels unprotected. Here's the truth. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. They don't shut people out. They show people where the entrance is to love, to connect to you. They're not about control. They're about clarity. Setting a boundary does not make you selfish. It makes you self-aware. It makes you someone who understands the energy it takes to live well and love deeply, without abandoning yourself in the process. So whether it's a 10 p.m. text you don't respond to, a conversation you finally have, or a little shift in how you show up in relationships, I hope you remember you're allowed to protect your peace, your time, your truth. Self-respect means we don't just pour into others. We check the level in our own cup first. And if this episode made you feel seen, share it with someone who might need a reminder that boundaries can be brave and kind. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with me.